Welcome to AI, another week of artificial intelligence and machine learning podcast, where we discuss AI from multiple perspectives to bring you the best of all the perspectives. AI, we have Yasser today, who will discuss artificial intelligence. Not really, but data specifically because he does work with blockchain, and just like AI, blockchain is data heavy, data based, and it provides us with a whole lot of features that otherwise is very impossible to do, similar to artificial intelligence. You cannot do a whole lot of these features without artificial intelligence and machine learning. So Yasser agreed to discuss blockchain solutions with us, and I am the person who's going to learn today from his, experiences, because I really don't know the depth of blockchain. I just kind of scratched the surface, I would say. So I'm looking forward to learning from Yasser about blockchain and the use cases around blockchain and the excitements of the world of blockchain. So Yasser, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Asif. How about you?
I'm doing good. I am glad that you're here. And it's been very much anticipating on your presence here, because we've had few blockchain conversations in this podcast, but over time we've realized that we've never had a blockchain expert. So you're
Well,
it, my friend. Floor is yours. You make an
well,
introduction, and then we'll get going.
yeah, sounds good. Thank you. Well, first of all, I thank you for such a great gesture. Blockchain expert. That's quite a big feat there. Some big shoes to fill, but I'll try my best. Hello, everybody. My name is Jaser Cooley. I'm currently the VP of product at Simba Chain. It's a company that I joined in about 2022 as a startup. We've been working with the government, mostly providing them, like the DoD, DLA, certain other folks within that government space, with blockchain applications, blockchain development. We're really a platform that kind of does that, right? So I've been in blockchain since about 2017, where I started off my journey as a software engineer, where I was kind of writing out smart contract code while I was at Accenture. So this is my tenure at Accenture. I was a software engineer, kind of 2017. Really started out building smart contract development for really financial institutions, and really more importantly, mortgage lending at that time was the use case. I mean, this is like when technologies are brand new. We were working with two technologies at that time: DAML, digital asset. So I was writing smart contract code within there, and then we were writing smart contract code using Java with R3 Corda at that time. And this is 2017ish, right when these technologies were brand new. These were like really small companies that were really just gaining traction. I remember like I would actually go to the digital asset office in New York, and work with the Python developer who's writing the Python SDK. I mean, it was that type of relationship, and I was blessed. I was just really just fell into that opportunity. I kind of got exposed to blockchain with crypto, and then I got really interested into it, and I was like, I really want to join a blockchain project. And thankfully, I was at Accenture, where I could learn a lot of different vast technologies and really present myself as a subject matter expert while learning at the same time. It was quite a unique experience. Um, and so I kind of, grew that, delivered a couple of projects, and kind of grew from there. But then I got the opportunity to work at Salesforce. And that's where I kind of went back into the product world, and focused more on just product operation, product management, product development. Within Salesforce, I was able to launch out multiple products within the Service Cloud, Omni Cloud Suite, field service lightning type of products, where you're really just doing a taxonomy lift and shift, right? And this is before the whole AI portion came to Salesforce. So you have these issues where you would reach out to support engineers, and you wouldn't be able to get your case assigned to them, whether you call them, text them, email them, because certain people have to be able to solve your problem, certain agents and engineers. Well, that matchmaking, that routing engine, that was like my first baby there. That was my first product there, where I kind of launched that out. Now, all of this is going on. This is kind of like my full time. I'm working at Salesforce. I still have this love for crypto, NFTs, and NFTs are kind of starting to take off at this time while I'm at Salesforce, my tenure there now. This is when like NFT like what is it, the NBA Top Shot, for example, that really started to kind of take precedence and build market share and really started to kind of take a name for itself, right? The word NFT started to come into play. And this is really, I would say, right in the time of like DeFi kind of kicking off as well. So like while I'm at Salesforce, I'm still kind of providing some sort of consultant services, just kind of really providing the blockchain kind of aspect of things, and now going into more of a consumer space rather than a government enterprise space of professionally, right? And so while that kind of going off, the NFT hype cycle takes off, right? That's where Board Ape Yacht Club and Cool Cats and some of these other ones like Doodles and I can't even remember some of them now, to be honest. But at that time, these guys really started to take off, and I started to get a lot of different projects from smart code generating to and this is all net new, right? Like the word even smart contract or writing Solidity code or any of that was kind of net new for a lot of developers at that time. They really started to pop off these frameworks and stuff. And I always knew that I wanted to get back in blockchain. That was something I always wanted to be a part of. I wanted that technology to be my main my main thing. I kind of wanted that to be it. So I got the opportunity as a company that I was interested in, Simba. I kind of kept an eye on them. They also started in 2017. So I'll roll back into that story in a little bit here when I go into the Simba talk. Um, and that's really when I decided that I don't want to be in the consumer space when it comes to blockchain as much. I want to go more in the enterprise and government space. I believe that felt like a natural fit for me because of how I am, who I am, my philosophies and beliefs, and then also on top of that, knowing that this technology just always requires some sort of authoritarian and some sort of admin, some sort of administrative figure. It is decentralized by nature, the technology, but the processes, the data, the flow of things requires um, ownership of that, right? And so, who owns or who does all of that, right? It's the government, it's these enterprises, it's the companies, right? At the end of the day, the consumers will now have a place to be able to do that because they'll be able to own their own data, but it's still going to be driven from these companies and enterprises. So while I'm at Salesforce, I decided to take a leap of faith and join a startup called SimbaChain. And this was right at the start of 2022, where the hype cycle was slowly kind of coming down, the NFT marketplace, right? All that's kind of coming down, the open sea and everything. It's still a little bit of hype there, but I would say that that first 6 months of 2022, the first half of the year was kind of the downfall of NFTs, right? It just really shattered significantly. And thankfully, at that time, I had joined the company called Simba, where I was charged of the enterprise product. Like that was our thing, was creating a platform. So I'll kind of jump in here, talk a little bit about Simba Chain and kind of the history of that. So therefore, you can kind of tie it together. But really, it was incubated out of the University of Notre Dame in 2017. And it started with a DARPA grant, right? Simba, what it really stood for at that time was the DARPA grant was a simple interface messaging blockchain application, right? And if I'm correct, that's actually what
Okay.
Simba stood for. And
Wow.
and our co-founder, our CTO, Dr. Ian Taylor, who was a professor uh, at university, and that's kind of where it incubated. He started that, and it was just messaging. It was just being able to message one to the other. That's what the application was really supposed to be about, right? But
Okay.
now, like since then, having worked with the government so much, we've become a trusted name in the decentralized data exchange space within the government enterprises, right? We have a platform that really allows for a secure, reliable, verifiable data interaction across any systems, right? You want to aggregate this data and interact with these systems together to be able to drill down and make sure that you have reliable, trusted data that's portable, right? And we really our comprehensive solution really is it's the power of decentralized DIDs, VCs, and blockchain transaction. It's really the merit of these three technologies that's put together. With that, we're able to provide a very secure, trusted data exchange. And it's across multiple systems, across and just within any system. It's real time. It connects the data with vendors, suppliers, resellers, internal teams, all with an ease, and more importantly, the trust. Right. So how did we get into this? Like, how did we kind of fall and stumble, if you could say, like into this realm of technology, right? Like blockchain is a very Web3 is a very big sphere. Technology is a very big area. Like, how did we kind of fall into this? Well, there's like an evolution that's been happening with Web3 within this Web3 space of blockchain, right? And so really started the early focus as dApps, as what they call them, decentralized application. Now they're just called apps, right? There's just apps that are just
Okay.
using decentralized technology.
Okay.
And so this is when, DeFi kind of started kicking off, exchanges, like this is like early days, the 2017 days and kind of stuff, and 2018, 2019 days. And the current shift towards developing and advancing like services at that time was very important, right? That was kind of the deal. Prioritizing security, verifiability of all of that information. Now here comes the integration of blockchain, right? Now you've got blockchain, now you've got these new two kind of layers of technology that kind of came out because of it. It's DIDs, decentralized identifiers, and then VCs, verifiable credentials, right? These are, think of them as like NFTs, as tokens, right? They stand for something. They're an asset, right? They stand for something. They value something, right? And so these innovations are really pivotal, right? Because they enhance data security and trustworthiness in the digital interactions. Now, you would think that, well, we already kind of have identifiable metrics, right? We can identify humans, but the issue is you can't identify humans and data and then be able to provide credentials, credibility, that this is the identity that provides the credentials to this data, right? So now here comes this new focus that enables systems and humans to interact with the higher data integrity and privacy and redefining trust, right? Like so now you're looking at it from like multiple angles, right? So you've got third party verification, you've got a secure data exchange. The world runs on data, right? We really focus on making it secure, reliable, and third party verifiable. That's if we can summarize it in just that way, we're the tool that allows you to do that.
Yeah, it brings back a lot of the now the a lot of these experiences that I've had with blockchain as you speak through all this terminologies, because it's really is something that underlying solution that we see a lot of the success use cases that are on the surface level, right? And understanding the underlying capabilities means a lot more opportunity opens up. So I think the zero knowledge proof is what I was thinking about earlier, where you are able to identify a transaction and where that transaction is happening and who that person you're transacting with, without really knowing anything about that other person. Just off of these computing system, you're able to identify that this transaction is verifiable and this transaction is trustworthy, right? And these exciting capabilities that we don't have today, highly available, it now we see the possibility of it making it highly available for the future use cases, right? So the surface level use cases that we have not seen previously, now for that to become a reality, I think it's a very exciting time to be in the technology field at this point, right? Because technology, don't get me wrong, has been always exciting, but this is exciting because we've actually been waiting for the integration to happen, where hardware, software, and data can work in a what's that word? Work together. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Integrated, right? This integrated fashion of work, and then having security wrapped around it, and have that credibility wrapped around it, the trustworthiness wrapped around it, is the ultimate pathway forward, right? Because we've been making creating data and collecting data and making all this infrastructure to provide this data at safe space, like confidential and available, and have the integrity on them, but to take it to the consumer to a level where they don't no longer have to doubt about what happened to their data and how that data will come back to them and what will be the status of that data, without thinking twice, right? That capability
Hmm.
is something that is very futuristic, even to a lot of people, because they don't really see blockchain for what it is. What they see is a surface level use case, but they don't understand the blockchain that works under it to make it all make it all happen in a trustworthy fashion. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that you see the complexity that's happening right in front of you, but you don't understand the scalability that it had to go through in order to for it to get there, right? How did NFT get to a point that everybody was able to trust NFT to say whatever it is product wise I'll put out there in the world, it will be worth it and also scalable, as in the level of scalability we've seen with the NFT is mind-boggling, because the infrastructure that had to be under the surface is insane, right? To me it is still, it
Yep.
is to this day it is still insane. And then we had like this integration that's happening. So integration wise, I think there's blockchain and there's AI, right? You've had all these open conversation about blockchain for a while back, and these days you're seeing Chat GPT that's bringing AI possibility up to the surface, and then now everybody is really pushing for AI. Talk to us a little bit about that. I think you're researching and you're understanding some of this AI capability as well. Tell us a little bit about that, the blockchain and AI integration.
Yeah, no, that's a very good intersection that's currently kind of just brewing up because of how AI just took off this past year, right? It really started to become a part of day to day, right? And more importantly, the game-changing role of AI in just, in defense, in the defense sector, right? We're seeing some incredible things here, such as AI systems, right? And this is really those folks who like fancy machine learning models, language models. They're not just cool like jargon, right? They're actually bringing up huge strategic economic perks, right? And so if you can imagine it, AI can quickly analyze complex data, whip up new innovative material, be able to forecast how things will be within either the supply chain system, whether within the defense system, all of these things, because now that data and more importantly, the system that's interacting with that data. So the Web3 identity for these AI agents, and then the data that they produce as well, for example, to be able to track that back to provenance, all of that is being able to be tracked on chain. So therefore, now when you do analyze this data, the data itself is resilient and its readiness, right? It's empowered significantly to be able to take that. So you've got like AI systems that I would say, or really AI agents that want to be able to talk to each other, speak with each other. All of these type of things is important because if I paint a picture right now, you could see that you could verify the origins of your data that you trained your model on and track its journey throughout the AI system, right? So digital signatures add a layer of accountability, for example. So that's like making transactions, all of the above. That system, that AI agent can now have the identity as a way to be able to digitally sign and hold itself accountable, right? And more importantly, the system owner can now be held accountable as well. So ensuring, that those handling the data are responsible for its quality. More importantly, the accountability is there. So plus the blockchain itself creates an unalterable record, right? Immutable record of the data and the data's provenance. So not only just the data, but where it came from, who originated this data source itself, and how we did it. The methods also can be stored on chain as well, right? How we can, if we did multiple sources, if we did an aggregation of layers of sources, for example, like for in supply chain, you have so many different type of use cases, right? So like I'll give you a defense use cases. That's kind of what we do and what we work on most importantly, but that's kind of where our main focus is, right? And so like near peer competitors and stuff like China and Russia, they seek to disrupt the DoD supply chain, right? So it's resulting in vulnerabilities and military, like, just readiness, warfighter capability, and then really just compromising our security, our national security, right? That's a big deal. Now, eventually, and I mean, they already are, right? Our country's already starting to invest from a defense perspective, from a security perspective, into these new technologies. I mean, they've been at it, right? And they continue to do so. So, like, developing and deploying modern IT architectures like this, where LLMs and machine learning models that are really the underlying engines, right? The components of AI, really at the end of the day, the integrating the data and the systems along with those, with the current existing systems, with the addition of best available security measures, it's critical when it comes to supply chains readiness and resilience, right? You got to make sure that the data that you're looking at to make the decision, whether it be you, your team, or even AI systems, that data itself is accurate. It's ready to make decisions on, right? We just have a load of data. We just don't have information, right? So how do we make sure that the data that we have is accurate and system? And so the trustworthy configuration of autonomous systems, um, I think that that's a big deal, right? Because now these AI agents become a system. It's an autonomous system now, which are a big deal in not just defense but everywhere, right? And the ability to rapidly configure these systems to be able to find newfound capabilities to analyze, to provide the information they need to the folks on the field, folks on the ground, right? The soldiers, the analysts, all of the folks that are a part of that. That's really the biggest key point that I think, that by using blockchain backed digital credentials, these users can report on the quality of autonomous system components, right? They can give back that feedback, and they know exactly what the issue is because the provenance is tracked, data is tracked, and the methods of how they got to that as well are on chain.
Yeah, if anybody who's listening and they're thinking of like, okay, when I have to do this myself, you know, what sort of challenges would I run into? I think these are the challenges that we do not think of on the surface level. And I'm using the word
Mhm.
surface level multiple times just to say, when you have an exciting idea or you want to find a specific use case, or when you do find that specific use case, these are the concerns that you will have. And blockchain is ultimately that infrastructure under your surface, where you will have to challenge yourself to say, do I go with blockchain now or tomorrow? Right. Sooner you start with a blockchain, sooner the benefit will come very evident, because when you get hit with an audit, when you get hit with some cybersecurity attack, or when you get hit with a challenge where your trustworthiness is being questioned, how do you incorporate blockchain then, or did you already start with the blockchain in the infancy stage, right? So these use cases, depending on how sensitive they are, I would always recommend blockchain, right? And I will always say, if there's a use case that if you think the blockchain is not something that you can afford, I will say think again, right? Because there's ways to approach with data that you can easily find, but then there's also this infrastructure. When to engage with blockchain, at what level you want to engage with the blockchain, has to be part of your calculation. So you mentioned DoD is very thorough with any ideas that they're going to spend few dollars on, right? Be it millions and billions, whatever the case is. But to incorporate blockchain in the early stage, even into the thought process, is very important. Just like these days, every thought process that people have as far as a solution development, they should incorporate AI somewhere, right? And to incorporate blockchain is an advantage of what AI can benefit mostly from. And I think you exactly hit that right on the head when you said, where's that data model, and where did that data travel from, where that data was at rest, where that model was trained. If you have a blockchain solution to cover all of that inside of a ledger that you can really have a lot of trust for, right? Trust in, it really helps with your AI model training, and understand that during the model training there was no sabotage, right? That's the key word
Mhm.
everybody has to kind of focus on, is that when you do your model training, you really have to understand the model must not be sabotaged at one point or another, right? Because if it is
Yeah.
sabotaged, what comes up into the surface is that now you have to double take the output and say, how can I trust this information? Because I know at one point it was sabotaged, right? And most of the time, sabotage is not a known information, right? Just like data poisoning is not a known information. Um, to
Yeah.
have these trust built into a system for AI development, and then have to a blockchain to provide that trust score, I think is a very sensitive topic, and very important one at that. And that's why it's, of course, a sensitive, because otherwise, we'll all do it, right? Because it really requires some know-how. And I think, Josh, like that's the beauty of your subject matter expertise, is that we understand security from one perspective of I would say, let's use DoD for example, right? What does a user have to do in order to be secure? Right? That's the surface level understanding of security. But one of the beautiful ways to secure information and data is blockchain. That is the under the surface level, that infrastructure level data security. I think that is super important for any organization that's looking forward to either evolve into better data security, and actually evolving into developing and adopting AI as part of their solutions, right? Big or small, I think blockchain enables a lot of different sides of the organization. But regardless of where we do model training and where we incorporate blockchain, I think is a very must-have kind of thought process in your solution development. So, with that being said, I think one of the reasons that I really enjoy the blockchain solution, it is because it's decentralized, right? And there is a lot of conversations that are happening. Sort of, I'll give you one of the recent ones that I'm really been fascinated by is amount of data centers that we will have, and amount of data centers that we will have worldwide, as in not necessarily in Virginia and Ohio and Idaho, right? We're going to have it worldwide. It'll be on the edge. It'll be kind of near where we live, actually, right? A decentralized AI system, right? Because
Mhm.
there's a lot of talk about edge AI, which is the locally processed AI system that will be able to give us AI-like experience locally, rather than to say, this AI comes from some data center out of state. We will be able to do edge AI more frequently because of compression of the AI. And in order to support that edge AI, we will have decentralized AI, sort of to back up that edge AI in zero latency manner, right? And I know blockchain technology has been super known for its decentralized capability, its ability to work anywhere and everywhere, as long as the computing power is there. So um, I'm super excited about that. But tell us a little bit more about some of those use cases that you're seeing, and the best use case, and sort of the use cases that you're very excited in the future, looking forward to those technology as well. Give us some rundown of those use cases as well.
Yeah, one could one kind of feel good excuse me, one feel good type of use case that we're blessed to be a part of, and I feel like it's going to start making an impact to the day-to-day users actually as well. So for a company called Talks in Mexico and South America, kind of exists. It's like the Starbucks of coffee. They produce their own coffee beans all the way from the farms of Nicaragua and like smaller other farms and villages, all the way to all of Mexico and South America, and even some portions of Europe, Spain, and stuff. So they're a really well-known brand. They have coffee shops as well, and they sell coffee. So we were able to provide them a solution, and kind of going back to what you said. When and where should blockchain be a part of the use case, and how quickly? Right, you said it should be early on, and the benefit of what we do is that we make blockchain really interoperable. So it doesn't matter. Today you could deploy on a public chain. Tomorrow, maybe some requirements chain, and yeah, you need to convert over to a private chain. Well, we make that very easy. Not only we lift and shift very easily. There's like 2 clicks, simplified UI. There's APIs to be able to fine tune and do it. So we really abstract all of the complexities of blockchain. It makes it easy to hook it up to blockchain, your current day application immediately. It's just a set of APIs. So right now, for example, if without Simba's platform, if you were to utilize a blockchain, let's say you started this use case of being able to track and trace coffee beans from start to finish, right? You would have to write smart contract code, deploy it, write an application to be able to speak to it, set up an interface API kind of in a sense, and then have some sort of interface for the end consumer to be able to interact with that API as well, right? Multiple clicks, a couple of days worth of work if you know what you're doing, kind of. If you don't, maybe a couple of weeks, and then you have to figure out how to integrate it within your system as well, right? There's that integration link that needs to happen. Maybe you have some data that needs to flow in. All of this is multiple steps, various amount of days to hours to complete, right? For us, it's about 6 clicks, 6 UI clicks, and you'd be able to deploy a smart contract and a set of REST APIs that are on a Swagger doc. You can plug it in at any given point to a Postman mobile app. Start interacting with that smart contract, right? That you just designed, developed, and deployed all on our platform. Um, then you're able to set up subscriptions or webhooks where you're able to talk from one smart contract to the other, or from one smart contract or system to another system, right? Let's say you have like Salesforce, or let's say you have like some sort of ordering system where if this type of transaction occurs on the chain. So let's say I make a transaction of $530, or I'm moving assets around that are over $530. I can set up a filter that says, okay, if this transaction volume or transaction amount or whatever variable that I set it up as, I can make it to where anytime it's over $530, it automatically sends me an email, SMS, or talks to this API endpoint. And that could be the API endpoint at some sort of processing system or whatever, right? Maybe the next step in the supply chain. All of that is all through a UI. That makes just the amount of time and knowledge that you have to know and interact with the blockchain very minimal. It makes it to where a no code, low code tool developer could kind of do it, to even to a point where someone who wants to get down and make it robust and have all of the functionalities, they can get into one of our SDKs, and start working within code. So that makes the whole process of being able to hook your application to a decentralized ecosystem, that Web3 ecosystem, completely just abstracted. It's just a set of APIs to you guys, right? That's one of the perks of our platform is the benefits of that, right? And so the interoperability comes into play. Let's say you created this application, you did it on a private chain because you wanted to just prove the MVP or the prototype. You got some funding around it, right? It's now becoming a company because you've got some, movement and traction. Now you're like, oh wait, we got to make this the public chain, because that's the whole incentive or the model that it's a requirement for your application in some sort of way or capacity, right? It fuels the business objective. So then how do you transfer all of that private chain data, or whatever chain one's data that you have? You have to now redeploy everything, recontract everything, do all of this stuff. Well, with us, it's just a couple of clicks and maybe some configuration. And then now you've got yourself a full like API that interacts with both of the chains for you. So now when you're querying data, you still have this legacy chain one data, and now you have this new chain two data. Now you as an end user, or that mobile app developer, or even that developer that's going to capture that data and kind of present it to your end customer, that's just one API to you. You don't have to think about the various chains or multiple chains that you have. So now you're able to create like hybrid solutions where you may have some data that needs to be obfuscated that can be rolled up in a private chain, and then you've got some data that can be publicly made available. So now these two chains are talking to each other. But for you as a developer, or even the end user, I mean, the end user is not going to notice anything. They just see data on the screen, right? But you as a developer, you're just going to interact with one API. So all three layers, right, where the AI systems are going to sit at the infrastructure layer, or the developers who are creating these applications for these companies or consumers, and then the end consumer, right? There's three layers of the data that's visualized. So let me take a step back. That's super easy to do, right? Now that you've kind of got us, now that you've got a little narrative to be able to work with, like, wow, that was pretty easy to deploy out smart contracts and start getting started, right?
Right.
So now let's go back to the talks use case, where we're able to track and trace coffee beans from farmers all the way down to the end user. Now, why is it important to the end user? I really call that out. It's because, A, you're now going to be able to tip back whenever you purchase this coffee, or this batch of coffee, this coffee bag. You scan it on the app, right? And now you're able to tip back maybe a couple of dollars, and that tip will go back to those specific farmers who that coffee bean was produced by. because you really thought it was free. Not only that, for the owners of the supply chain, they cut out intermediaries, right? There's about, so we did this, it was we had a case study on this. We had about 9 intermediaries that were cut out, with about 600% revenue increase for these farmers, right? And that's kind of what Talks realized and said, oh, wow, this is a problem. And we believe this might be the solution for us, is that we need to be able to identify, quantify, and really provide data, this data source right here, identity. So therefore we can track it back to which identity it came from, right? At the end of the day. And so you're able to figure out how farmers are leaving now, right? Farmers are leaving these villages and going to the cities. So now less and less producers are there. So Talks said, hey, this is a big problem, right? So how do we increase the cost that we want to give, increase our revenue to give back to these farmers to make them stronger as a village community, and also not increase without increasing the cost to our customers, right? And so like that was like the biggest deal. So it goes from the farmer to the cooperative to the sellers kind of scans the barcodes and tracks that. And then at that time, it's tracking to see how much humidity, any change from the last place to this place. Now you can see when that exactly happened. Did it happen from the cooperative to the seller? Did it happen from the seller to the roaster to the warehouse to the restaurant? Where did that happen? Because now you're going to scan the barcode to identify the batch of coffee, and it adds a transaction when the seller roasts the beans, for example, and sends it to the roaster in Mexico City, for example.
Yeah.
So they can track all of that, right?
Right.
It's all trackable.
Right.
So they're able to quantify which farmers are able to produce better quality, right? They pay them more. And so now these farmers who were making like, maybe 30,000, maybe 40,000 max if they were able to annually for the whole village that they were producing this for, now they're able to make 75, 80K. Like they're actually able to make a sustainable living. So now these farmers who moved out to the city because it just wasn't affordable to live based on what they were getting, but just not how much they're making because they weren't making much anymore. Those farmers are coming back because they're like, okay, like you're able to give back to us and properly pay us for what we do. This, along with many other use cases like this within the supply chain, like leaky supply chain distribution, right? It was made for one country, the product, like Oreos, for example, they were made for, the continent of Africa, but they were rerouted in the container. Someone did something fishy right in the middle and shipped them to Detroit in the US. And so now those are made for like 10 cents because they use
Right.
different material, different packaging, everything. And now that you originally would buy them for $1 as a distributor or whatever, now you're buying it for 50 cents, but still selling them the US prices.
Right.
So, like leaky supply chain. Those guys are taking the middleman cuts and they're abusing the power because there's no verifiability, there's no data being tracked properly with identity, and all of the data is mutable. It's not immutable. Anything can change. Right now, I could go in. There's no audit logs. I could change those audit logs if I want to, and no one would know. Like there's so little security. So first of all, where it's stored, like an enclave, like a data enclave, that's like the first layer of security,
Right.
right? Oftentimes that's hackable, right? But we place our role-based access because of the way we have our patents and the way we've written up our patents. We have patent around this where we are able to store role-based access on chain. So even your access, being able to access that data and verify the data, that is also stored on chain. So that's immutable as well. That's the most important key difference there, is that no one can change your access unless the rights of the people that have that right, those are the only people that can change that access. But then you'll be able to track that, right? So you'll be able to see that 2 years ago in this block of this transaction, you did not have access. 2 years later, you got promoted to some position that now gives you the clearance to be able to see classified or classified data. You go from unclassified to classified. So there you go. Like that now you can see that transaction. You can see the provenance of that lineage as well, and no one can change it. So that's kind of the key components that blockchain, the value, the benefits that it really provides. And then if you kind of marry the three, verifiable credentials, digital identifiers, DIDs, and then the transactions itself within a zero knowledge environment, it's very secure, it's very authentic, and more importantly, I think the biggest key piece, you can trust it, right? Trusting the data is what blockchain provides. I don't think it provides as much security as cybersecurity would, for example, right? Like that's not its main piece. It does provide a layer of security for sure. 100% agreed to that. But I think
Right.
the biggest thing and the value that it provides is trust in the data, the readiness of that data.
Yeah, I mean, cybersecurity is CIA, right? That confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if that's cybersecurity, how do you hone in more on the data side of things and say, yes, these data are actually confidential, has integrity, and highly available? As in, you don't have to sit there for 24 hours and have the data show up 24 hours later. But I think where you
Mhm.
started off was just beautifully said, right? You said how easy it was and how cost effective it is, and why that cost effectiveness gets trickled into a marketplace where you can say coffee as an example, or if you look at it in the surface level, you can talk about fishing in a zone that is authorized versus zone that
Yep.
is illegal to fish in. You talk about diamonds, we can talk about so many different use cases, but the use
Yep.
cases are not just in the logistics, and that's what I think the majority of the people need to understand about blockchain is that it's not just in a logistics fashion of something, a goods and product that Walmart probably will sell at the end point, right? It's more like you can talk about music, you can talk about movies, you can talk about YouTube clips, you can talk about NFT, just like we talked about NFT early in the conversation. Um, Now you can
Yeah,
move
there's
into data
one.
sets, right? Like even data sets
Yep.
could be
Yep.
a product that you can sell as a startup. And in this podcast, we focus on startup as well. So some of the startups that that we had discussion on about the startups, and they will always say like, I'm already in the blockchain market, right? That's what I'm trying to provide as a service inside of blockchain, because there's a lot of excitement around crypto. There was a lot of excitement around a document signing. I'm trying to get to the terminology here, smart contracts, excuse me. And then you had all these excitements about NFT, and there was a lot of startups that engaged with this conversation, and I've always stayed on the side of the caution with saying, if you are doing a business and that business generates data, and that data that you can actually put in a blockchain wrapper and let somebody rent it or use it, or say you created a specific algorithm and you want to wrap that so that way somebody can interact with that algorithm while you are making sure you're financially are compensated, and then you have a full ownership of that algorithm at the end of the day, right? So I
Yeah.
think those are some of the possibilities that you really have to widen the spectrum, right? Go from coffee beans to Walmart pulling the shelves because there's some sort of a disease or a salmonella on the salad. How to pull that from the shelf specifically in certain store because of blockchain allowed Walmart to quickly diagnose that and identify and take action on it. And then you got the other side of the spectrum where you can now sell data sets or algorithms using blockchain as a solution to provide that service, right? Beautifully said, man. That was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, there's plenty of other use cases, like you said, right, that are outside of supply chain logistics, like even content. I think that's a big one that we kind of did with the Australian Defence Force. So authenticating government media. Now, in this case, it was government, but Verify is a product that I believe a couple of companies like Polygon and a couple of others came up with that is open source. And Fox Sports, Fox Media, Fox Sports, they were kind of the first ones to accept it. But really, what it is that, like, for example, ADF, they produce a range of public media products each week, right? Including press releases, images of operation, video showcasing its activities. However, once this data is available online, it's susceptible to like alterations and falsifications and vulnerability to just being fraudulently, like these deep fakes, for example. That's a prime example of that, right? Someone produced the content, but we don't really know if that's the real person that produced the content. And so therefore, we built out a blockchain based capability that enabled the ADF to authenticate official images, videos, press releases, so text, video, omni, right? And publicly release that media asset, right? Like, so therefore you had a mobile app, you would just copy and paste the link of the media that the ADF produced. So let's say you're scrolling on Facebook or something like that, Twitter or something, or X, whatever, and just kind of just going down the list. You're like, oh wow, they produced this content. Is this legit? Like, I feel like this seems a little fishy. Like, just doesn't seem right. So well, you upload the video. right? Or like upload the link or whatever, and it checks it. It checks for PDFs, verify the authenticity, and users can like just see that there's like a whole 100% match or whatnot. You'll be able to see red, yellow, green, and see how accurate this is. So let's say if you get a 90% match, there is maybe a 10% chance that something has been done here, some alteration. Now it could just be a watermark, right?
Right.
Maybe the news broadcaster, right? They put the watermark. So 90% seems, or 95% seems okay. That seems pretty accurate. Like I trust that, right? Like there should be no issues there. But let's say if they upload a video and it's about 60%, where now it's like you think about it and you're like, wow, 60%. Like what did they alter? Well, they could have altered maybe there was like a background flag on the wall of the person, right? They posted the person, good or bad, not too sure, but there was a flag on the back, right, or something, and now that flag has been removed. Someone photoshopped and removed it, right?
Right.
So it's a subtle thing. It's not
Right.
something maybe necessarily like a really bad thing. Maybe it could be because of some licensing agreement or something.
Yeah.
But now it shows 60% inauthentic, right? Now
Right.
you as the user, now you as an end consumer, a citizen of that nation, have the right to determine, is this something I should believe in or not? They have some sort of like metric, a number, a percentage that gives them some sort of confidence level that they never had before. And so these also are different types of use cases that go the other way, like it goes downwards, right? It's downstream. But let's say if you wanted to do upstream, right? If the government wanted to see who created this content and why did they create this content and what is this content for and all of the above, they could also be able to track it downwards as well. That's where our system kind of uses knowledge graphs to be able to visualize all of this data, right? So now, like we say this all the time to our customers, great, you're on the blockchain. Now what? Right? Like we made it very easy for you guys to get on chain and get this data on chain. But the hardest part is actually retrieving that data, right? You're gonna have, let's say if you have multiple chains or multiple nodes, or it's just a very complex ecosystem, that means you're gonna have multiple endpoints. You're gonna have to aggregate the data offline, right? Put all of it on like in some sort of container, massage it, aggregate it, build the story the way you want, and then be able to present it and do something with that data, right? It's ready now at that point. But with us, it doesn't matter how complex the system is, how complex the infrastructure is. It's just one endpoint, one query. It's not complex. And you're able to see the relationships of those assets on chain. I think that's a key component that we provide that other folks don't and our competitors don't. Like, so all of this data can be seen downstream and upstream. So you were talking about bill of materials type of scenario. I know going back to logistics supply chain, but that is a very, very, that's the more appropriate use case more than anything. Obviously, there are various other use cases that it is applicable for, but for a use case demonstration perspective, it makes sense, right? You want to be able to track who created this part and this part and this part that made this product. So therefore, if there's some sort of recall or some sort of issue, the top governing office can go all the way down and see who made that product. Or the other way around, where if the part owner says, hey, there's a fault in my part, and so now the product owner and all of the other subsequent upper level of the tiers, the suppliers, distributors, all of the above, they can also be informed that this part that was a part of this product, because there are multiple parts that make a product, for example, the bill of materials. How do you track all of that, right? So that's all through our knowledge graphs, where you can visually see all of these components, these relationships of these assets. So we make it easy for you to also visualize the data, play with the data, interact with the data as well. And then if you wanted to upload it into or dump it out into like Tableau or some other data BI visualization tool, you could do that as well. That's also a part of our platform.
I think if anybody's listening and they're trying to visualize, just think about the knowledge graph database, right? That ability that Jaser, you mentioned, is like for an enterprise level users, this is that sweet spot, right? That sweet spot to say, well, hold on a second. If I do blockchain, I get all these other problem solved as well, right? That ability to pull a single string and get multiple strings that comes with it. So you're able to create that relationship. I mean, look, when we're talking about database, it's really difficult for a lot of these enterprise level users, decision makers, and leaders to understand that there's multiple sets of databases, and all databases do not store the same amount of data or types of
Mhm.
data, right? So when you have these unstructured data and you have no ways to pull that one single string to get all the information in, blockchain sort of paves that way for you even before you jump into AI machine learning, if that's what you're intending to get to as an output, right? So it's kind of like that augmenting blockchain. I mean, excuse me, augmenting an AI using blockchain, right? As in, if I was to develop an AI solution, where would blockchain will fit in, right? Or if I was to set up a blockchain solution, where would the AI fit in? I think one person described it very, very well. Is that if you think about data as a train, if the data is a train, the track that data travels on has to be on a blockchain track and an AI track. So it's two sides of the track, but the data travels through it, right? So you really have to think about understanding your enterprise level need. But if your enterprise level need says, I want to be able to pull one single string and get multiple sets of understanding, especially the relationship and trustworthiness, you really have to start thinking about blockchain as part of your AI solution. And if you have a blockchain solution, how do you use AI? Good question. That is something that will be fruitful to understand as far as trust score worthiness, if necessary, down the road. But as far as developing an AI quickly and say, I want to just get to an AI, right? I want to get to an AI solution tomorrow and not consider blockchain, I think is a huge loss, opportunity loss that probably can be addressed with Jaser, like your solution that you mentioned. But it's really important that you develop the infrastructure in a way that you can engage with a company like Simba in order to address those gap in solutions like blockchain. So really exciting way you described that, because they really drew a picture in my head that when you talk about knowledge graph, and having that knowledge graph is super important in the AI solution, that developing that relationship. So the improved data management, right? Because when you're talking about a immutable ledger, right? Well, that solves all sorts of AI problem, right? Accuracy and consistency that comes with it. I mean, it's beautiful. When we're talking about unstructured data, it kind of made me think like really deep about unstructured data, because we are very fond of structured data, and that's what we see on a daily basis. But when you're able to tap into unstructured data, let's say for example a Zoom call, the world changes for better,
Yep.
you know
I,
um,
I
uh,
I think it's also to note that it's not just unstructured. It's unstructured and cross-organizational or
mm,
cross-inter-org. So that's a big problem as well. It's
that's
not
right.
just you are siloed to your department. You're it's a cross-collaborative thing, right? So what happens is these enterprise leaders can't see that data. Therefore, they're really missing two things. A, how to make more money and how to save money. So the save money comes very easy. Compliance, audit,
Yeah,
right? You want to save that money. There's
that's
just
right.
no reason for you to miss
Yep,
those
yep,
flags, right?
yep,
And
yep.
then the net new market is the net new money is the new marketplaces that you can open, the new opportunity to resell and like Ferrari, for example, they lose billions of dollars every year on the secondary marketplace. Once you buy a Ferrari from them as a Ferrari owner, that's the only up information that they have of you as a customer and the car itself. After that, it could be sold five more times, four more times. They don't know the customers, nor do they know their vehicles. They're missing out on a secondary market opportunity because they're just not able to properly track everything. Now, we've partnered with companies that are able to track different things in different ways, right? Whether it be IoT sensors or even a company like Lithion, who actually won, I believe, the 2023 or 2024 Invention of the Year or something like that. 2023 Invention of the Year on time. And they create a digital fingerprint by just taking an image of things. Now we partnered with them and be able to put that data, that fingerprint on chain. So now it's a hash stored on chain. So now it's immutable. So let's say I take a picture of this like a very high end retail fashion Louis Vuitton bag, right? Now that
Okay.
bag is going to go through wear and tear, right? I'm able
Right.
to track it. So I
Right.
took a few images like of this bag, right? Like up, down, left, right. Cool, perfect. I then can either it's really I can sell this bag, I can do whatever with it, right? And then when I scanned an image, I click on save. It's saving a fingerprint of that image. It's using their proprietary technology to be able to map the image itself, create a fingerprint of that image, and then be able to. Then we use our technology to be able to put that on chain, hash that, and then be able to sell that as a digital collectible, right? So or a digital asset, right? So therefore, you now have a phygital, as kind of the coined word that I've been hearing a lot. Is this is a phygital concept where now I'm able to take a digital item, connect it to the physical world, and now be able to track and trace in a sense through that, right? So now I've got this fingerprint, this hash code on this NFT. This NFT can then be sent to someone. They can take a picture. So then I sell this to you, right? Also, if you're like, oh, you know what, I want this handbag. So I can send you the handbag. You take a picture to verify that, hey, this is the handbag that we agreed on. This is the handbag you purchased. Now, let's say if you take a picture and the fingerprint comes back, like you say, hey, no, this is a different bag, you can now decline the NFT. And so therefore that kind of the data of that the ownership of that bag is now not yours, it's still mine because it never unlocked in the first place and it never did it because you verified and it automatically said, oh, this is not a verified bag. Because when you click on the app, you can say, okay, you've got your bag, click verify. You take the image, it should match with that original image, right? And it doesn't. Now, let's say that bag has some wear and tear, all of the above. Their technology has the proprietary information, proprietary like complexities to be able to handle that, where it is able to track the wear and tear of that bag as well, right? That's the key component. They're able to use that as a fingerprint, put that on chain, and now use the on chain components as a secondary marketplace. So now that's something that unlocked that was never available, right? And really, it's just being able to get that data on chain. That's the most important piece. So they had the technology of being able to take an image and create a fingerprint out of it. Same thing with IoT sensors. You're able to track who's walking into your building and then be able to identify that person, and now you've created a digital identity for that person. So any interaction that they do in the store, in the facility, in the warehouse, like contractors for example, you can manage them, watch them, control them, and automatically, if you connect it with AI systems, be able to revoke and fine tune and be able to ensure that they're meeting the criteria of compliance that needs to be met. So it's a whole connected system, right? And it all revolves around how either the human or the system got this data, and do they even have the right to view the data first and foremost? Like I think it starts there, access, right? Like do they have the right to view the data, and are they the ones that are going to say this data is accurate? So they need to be able to provide the data a credential point, right? And the more AKA badges or the more credentials data gets, the more valuable, the more readiness it has. So now this AI systems can look at that data and make much better decisions. They're like, wow, a lot of people gave that data the credentials. And it seems like the people that gave it had the highest amount of credentials to give. So therefore, this data set seems the most valuable and weighted data. So now anything, and if I'm doing like a RAG model or fine-tuning my model, that data set has the highest credibility. So that needs to be the training model that it needs to go. And now you're showing the method of how that data is created, right? Who gave it the credentials, how it became the way that it became today. So for the AI system to be able to do its job.
Wow. Prioritization, right?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think see, I'm going to tell you one thing that we've been doing this podcast for a very long time. I think this is about the 56th episode or so, close to it. I think we missed out on the blockchain conversation until today. Today is the day that we started on blockchain, and I think we'll have to continue with blockchain because the value of it, the way you described it, Justin, like it was just like on point because it goes hand in hand with AI. But for subject matter experts to come in and explain that hand to hand combination, the integration, the interoperability, wow, like just phenomenal job, brother. I really appreciate you coming in here, giving us your time in an office hour to describe all these things because uh, no matter how people are engaging with AI or blockchain, improved data management is just a common sense, right?
Hmm.
Your governance of data, where that data comes from, whose data are you using, if that's good for your organization legally or not, whatever the case is. How do you do data management, and how do you stay safe out in the world where data is everywhere, but data is what you need? It's sort of like you can have water everywhere; it's not useful. But if you have a stream of water, that's probably somewhat useful. You know,
Yeah, the
so
kind of how I've been hearing it, and how I've been kind of repeating it is data is everywhere, but there's a lack of information, right? You need information. That's kind of because it goes from data to information to wisdom, right? That's kind of
that's right.
the three layers of connectivity of data. So right now we're in that data phase where, oh yeah, everything. I mean, and that's kind of what we did, right? For the past like 10 years of our life, we've been hearing big data, big data, big data. Okay,
Right.
well, data's here now. I think we have a lot of it now. What do we do with it, right? That's kind of people. That's kind of people. That's. I feel like that's where everyone's at right now. With like, okay, with like, wow, that's a lot of data. Cool. Like, what do we do with it? Can it help us? Can it do something with it? And so that's kind of where this AI stuff is coming into play. It's like, yeah, I don't think this data is like digestible by humans. It just won't ever be, right? And like, I like to bring these concepts down to such
Yeah.
layman's terms because like it's just like I explain blockchain just like I explain friendship, right? It's like
Yeah.
you have this social group of like five of you friends, right? And now you've got this new friend that wants to that he's your friend, right? And he's like, hey, I kind of want to join your group, man. It sounds like a really cool idea. So think of that as a consortium, right? That's
Mhm.
where these five enterprises are talking to each other within this decentralized ecosystem. They have this shared trust. They can say things, they can do things where they feel confident that it won't leak out, or even if it does, they'll be able to exactly pinpoint who did it because
Right.
it's credentials, it's trusted, it's a
Right.
zero trusted environment. So now if I bring this friend into this group, that the trust level barrier is gone, right? It's like a wall up. First of all, like, who's this new guy? Like, and then more importantly, you don't just bring the new friend. You talk
Right.
to your friends. You be like,
Right.
hey, I have a new friend, and he really loves this group. You guys have met him a couple of times. You guys have all worked with him in one way
Right.
or another. What if we bring him in here? And that's how they join a consortium, and that's how someone onboards a consortium. Like you just can't just join a consortium. You have to be onboarded, right? You have to be given that access and those rights and those credentials to be able to sit on that consortium. And it's the same way, right? If you don't trust that person, you're not going to interact with them. You're not going to want to work with them. Simple as that, right? And that's the same thing that I kind of say. Blockchain allows that social fabric that we have in our subconscious. That if I was to bring you around us, just to like some other friends that that you don't know, but I know, those other friends are going to be like, who's this guy? Okay, cool, nice, how to meet you, cool, and that's it. That's you're not going to go deeper than that. They're not going to trust you with every bit of information that they should, or even share information that they feel comfortable with, right? Until that level of trust is built. So that's kind of my
You,
layman's terms of what
yeah,
blockchain
no, I think
really is.
you just did the original twist of Phygital.
Yeah, yeah.
Brought
I
the
just
physical world into the digital sense of things.
yeah, I just did analog to digital, right? That's kind of like
No, that Phygital is going to live with me just like fish dine and thirst of water is what the world of data that we live in, right? This is the
dang,
two
yeah.
analogy that I'll probably laugh about for a while. But Phygital is something that I literally just heard for the first time today. So thanks for bringing that up.
Nice.
Because I think it's so true that if we are incorporating new solutions and incorporating new people is the next step in incorporating the new solution, right? So the way you said that, if you're bringing a new friend, well, I'm friend with the supply chain over here, the vendors over here, but this new vendor comes along. How much do I trust him? What information do I want him to see? It's sort of like an artist, right? If I'm an artist, I'm going to give you a 15-second sample of the music that you can listen to if you pay for the full 5 minutes, right?
Yeah,
And I'm going to make it that way so that 15 seconds you can do listen to it, you can put it in a tape recorder and record it, but you're not going to get the full 5 minutes, right? And I'll make sure that my interest is saved that way. So I think enterprise has the same sort of options with blockchain, and particularly with blockchain immutable ledger, where somebody can not just mess around and say like, oh, let me listen to the full 5 minutes, and you will never know about it, right? So
Well, like you say, like, being able to share a file, like that's kind of a big deal, right? Within
Yeah,
the government, like you have all these files and you have them within secured environments, or even just like right now, you have your files within Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever. You don't want to move those files, but you want to provide access or get credentials for that file. You want to keep where that file is, right? And that's our secret sauce. That's kind of where we provide the most amount of value, is that you can anchor it with an NFT and then be able to provide off-chain private data and access to those off-chain private data stores. So you can keep your data where it is. I think that's the most key important part to call out, is that with blockchain, you're thinking that, oh, I have to put all this data on chain. No, you can keep the data off chain. Keep it where it is. Keep it in that Dropbox. Keep it in that S3 bucket or a secure environment. You're just going to hash the contents on chain. So we have something called bundle hash, which is like our service where you could just, for this comes really handy for like compliance or auditability type of customers, where they
right.
provide compliance as a service or audit as a service, where they could keep where the files are, maybe 4 or 5 files. Like this one transaction requires like 4 receipts, for example, and the 4 receipts are PDFs that are saved within like some sort of bucket storage, right? And so now you throw the transaction to that bucket storage, but while you're throwing that transaction, you also tell us that that's what you're doing. And so you just hit an API, right? We just take that files, we just take those files information, we say, okay, that's the information right there. This is where the file is stored. This is how you access it. This is when you provided it. All that becomes a hash, and then that hash is stored on chain that references those 4 files. So any changes to those 4 files, you can see a discrepancy. You can see the audit of when it happened, how it happened, and then using technologies like Knowledge Graph, we're able to see who's the trusted source, data, all of that is all kind of put together, and it's still off chain. Like, I don't think I covered that part, but I wanted to kind of make sure that the users, like the folks, really understood that we're not moving your data around. That's the best. That's like the best benefit that you can have, is keep your data where it is. Right? We'll just secure it. We'll just add another layer on top of it that makes it securable, trustable, verifiable.
Well, without giving away anything sensitive, Jaser, how can somebody who's listening to this podcast reach out to you and start or initiate a conversation? Not necessarily with you, but with Simba or any organization that you're part of. How can somebody reach out to you and say, Jaser, I want to meet you and find out more about what you do?
Yeah,
Maybe
no, of course. No,
LinkedIn.
thank you. Yeah, no, thank you, Austin, for the plug here. But you can definitely, reach us out at simbachain.com. That's a great way to reach out to us. That comes to our sales teams and everybody else around the success of that. So if you wanted to reach out for Simba Chain, you can definitely reach out there on simbachain.com. You can also check out our website and kind of see all of our work there. You can also meet me, or if you wanted to speak to me on LinkedIn, Jaser, Jaser Akuli. You can also visit my website at jakuly.com. That's kind of a good way to reach out to me, and I'm pretty much on all social media platforms, X, LinkedIn. I'm even on Farcaster, you name it. Decentralized or centralized up there.
Well, thank you so much for these knowledge drop because, like I said, we've been doing this podcast for a while, but I think we missed out on blockchain the whole time. So this is a start, and this will be the beginning of the blockchain engagement in this podcast. So, Yasser, have a good rest of the day, and until next time, thank you all for listening in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.